Welcome to the Midcoast Community Council meeting of July 9th, 2014. Will the council members please introduce themselves?
Dave Olson.
Dan Haggerty.
Chris Johnson.
Forrest Stein.
Lisa Ketchum. And Erin Deinster, Councilmember Erin Deinster informed me she would be absent due to a family event, and Councilmember Joel Janot let me know at 5 p.m. today that he would be absent. First, we have the Board of Supervisors report from Nicholas Calderon.
So a couple things today. First, in the past you guys have heard us discuss the Surfers Beach project, which consists of a shoreline protection device, a segment of the California Coastal Trail, and a vertical access staircase providing coastal access and enhancing the access and recreation at that location. We have released the RFP for that project. So the RFP has been released, and we're now just in the process of waiting to receive the proposals from consultants and contractors out there. Throughout the process, we worked with Chris and Neil Merrilees, and both participated on conference calls with Caltrans and the California Coastal Commission. And through those conference calls and some emails, we developed a project scope of work and a project description, which were then used to, those were really the main part of the RFP, and then the rest of it is primarily legal boilerplate stuff. And so that's been out. The deadline for that is July 18th, Friday, July 18th, 4 p.m. And after that, we will let you guys know kind of where we are with that and what we receive and where that stands. So we're excited about that. We're getting that going. We received an email from Caltrans saying that they've submitted a funding request to Sacramento to fund their part of the project. So we're excited about this and hoping that we can get something done there. If, from what we're hearing, if next year's an El Nino year, then this project is even more important and time pressing. So we're excited about that. Moss Beach Park. The Moss Beach Park, some of you may know, construction for the Moss Beach Park bathroom started yesterday.
No.
Yeah, so it started.
I never thought I'd hear it.
I know.
Fantasizing.
I know. Well, now everyone's going to drive over there and be like, he's lying. No. Yeah, so construction started yesterday. It's going to take about a month to install the prefabricated bathroom. Included in this project is a ADA handicap parking space, as well as a trail that will connect the parking spot to the park. So the installation and work should take about a month, and while it is going on, the basketball court will be closed for this part of the construction. So that should take 1 month. And then, as you guys know, and as was discussed last MCC meeting, Supervisor Horsley got $260,000 put into the budget. Yeah, $260,000 put into the budget this upcoming fiscal year, to do the rest of the work at the Moss Beach Park bathroom to ensure that it's safe and it meets safety codes, and that the kids can still enjoy it and have fun. So we're excited about that, and that will be done more than likely in phases going forward. I was asked recently about the parallel trail. So we've done 2 grant applications for the parallel trail. One grant application went to the Transportation Authority, San Mateo County Transportation Authority, and that was for $500,000. That grant was received, and we're currently in the process of developing the funding agreement with the TA. If you will remember, the TA is the same entity that's funding the congestion management projects on Highway 1, and it took almost 2 years to get all the funding in place for that. So they're moving a lot faster on this one, but we're not sure when that'll be finalized, but we'll keep you guys posted on that.
Nicholas, you said there was 2 grant
Oh,
requests,
yeah.
one to San Mateo County TA. Did you mention the other one, or did I miss it?
No, right now I will.
Awesome.
So the second one was to Caltrans, and that was for the one to the San Mateo Transportation Authority was for Miramar and El Granada. The one that was submitted to Caltrans is for Montera and Moss Beach. And so we have not heard from that. We anticipate that we will hear back from them in August.
How much was that one for?
And that one was for $1 million. So we will let you guys know about that one. 2 weeks ago, Supervisor Horsley, along with the Office of Emergency Services, formed a San Mateo County Drought Task Force. So we're
Did you say drought?
yeah, there's a drought going on. Yeah, a drought task force. And so what we're really doing at this phase is we're monitoring the drought, and it's just an opportunity for parks and DPW and environmental health and OES to stay on the same page. And so we want to make sure, the objective of this is to make sure that when the drought gets to the point where people are directly impacted in a way that they don't have access to reliable potable water, then we want to be prepared to address that at that time instead of trying to play catch up. We want to be proactive about that. And so that's one of the things that Supervisor Horse has been trying to do in general, which is be more proactive than reactive. And so this is just another example of that. Lastly, the congestion management project, which is on the agenda. So I don't know if I'll explain. I'll say what I'm going to say, and then you guys can, if we want to discuss it during the agenda item, we could do that. So Supervisor Horsley, last time he was out here, talked about how he would like to have a task force, an MCC, an MCC subcommittee that would work on this element of it. Now, we believe that every member of the MCC would be interested on being on this subcommittee. So we think actually a way of doing this would be a workshop or a study session where we get the consultants here, and this would allow all the members of the MCC to participate on this. So I think, we think this would be a pretty good idea, and the consultants would be able to be here, have a Q&A, they'd be able to explain everything. We would do this between now and September when we anticipate the new designs. When we anticipate the new designs would be developed. They wouldn't be coming with the new designs. Not to say that we're not doing work to develop the new designs, because I think that's important. We're talking with Caltrans. We've recently gotten the consultants some traffic counts, and they are working with Caltrans to do a speed survey. So we're making progress. We're taking all the right steps. It's just when they come out on the next time, it won't be with new drawings. But that's not to say that we're not doing everything we can in the meantime to get you guys to get the community the projects that they asked for, and put ourselves in a position to provide different types of projects based on what we hear going forward. So that's all I have today. I'm happy to answer any questions. I see Leonard standing.
Well, let's do council first.
Shortly after he starts.
So a question on the Surfers Beach RFP. It's there's a link to it on the county government site, but it goes to an external site where you're supposed to register as a vendor to see it.
Mhm.
Is the RFP itself publicly available somewhere where you don't have to register as a vendor?
Yeah, I can send that out.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Can you explain what RFP is?
Request for proposals.
Okay.
So essentially an RFP is a document, it's a document that lays out what we're looking for from a consultant or a contractor. And so the way it works, it has a scope of work attached to it. It has a description of what we're looking for. It's got a couple other things, a schedule. And the consultants will look at that, and they will provide us with a document, a proposal that will say how they will address and how they would do this project. And then, we look at which ones meet our pricing and whatnot. We're rather limited by government code on what we can select. Government, for the most part, has to go with the lowest bid.
And is what you're looking for now, is that public information?
I don't understand the question.
The preliminary plan, I've heard seawall, but I've never seen any drawings or anything, any
Yeah.
sketches, or I've never really seen anything in writing. I've just heard that.
Yeah, so what you're asking essentially is for the RFP, and so I'll send that out. I'll send that to Lisa, and she
We'll
can
post it.
She can post it. And that's, what we're looking for is a consultant to take what we've said And the RFP includes surveys and environmental reviews and designs, construction plans, specs, estimates, all of that. And so we don't have any drawings per se, right? That's what we've gone out to bid to ask a consultant to do.
And whatever's being looked for is, matches what the community is already, I missed some of the first charrettes, but I'm
No, no,
assuming.
no.
He's talking about Surfers Beach
So-
erosion.
So this is Surfers
Right.
Beach. This didn't come out of the Highway 1 study. This came out of the fact that.
Because there were some drawings on the highways one. This is why it's confusing. You
Right, I understand what
right?
you're saying. So what you're asking about is the relocation of Surfers Beach, of Highway 1 at Surfers Beach. That's what you're referring to. Are based on the Highway 1 study.
Just whatever work is at Surfers Beach,
Right, so-
shoring up and all that.
Right, I've never seen any drawings for shoring up Surfers Beach. The drawings that I have seen regarding Surfers Beach have been for the relocation, so moving Highway 1 further inland.
Okay, well, yeah, the changing the parking, it's all the same. We're talking about.
Yeah,
this.
we're talking about a different project. So the project we're talking about is a shoreline protection device that would protect Highway 1's embankment from further coastal erosion.
Right.
And then it would also include a segment of the coastal trail, which currently is not at that location, and then a vertical access staircase, which will
Okay.
provide access to the beach. So yeah, there are no conceptual drawings for this. That's what the consultant will have to develop.
Okay, and the 260,000 in the budget for Moch Beach Park, you mentioned a bathroom, but it's not it's not a $250,000 bathroom. You're
No.
talking about, it sounds like you're gonna phase out the wood structure, is that true?
So the park budget, I'm sorry, the bathroom budget is separate. That money's already been appropriated, and picture that as in its own account. And so that money's been appropriated, and that money will be used for the Moss Beach Park bathroom.
Is that the 260,000?
No, the 260,000 is a separate pot of money that will be used to do retrofits to the playground in general, because parts of the playground are out of compliance, and we want to make sure that, one, we're in compliance, and two, we want to make sure that kids aren't getting hurt. So there's certain things we need to do, and that's what that 260,000 is. So the play structures and the bathroom are two separate projects, and they're two separate pots of money.
Is the wooden play structure gonna get demolished?
I mean, I wouldn't, no, so we're not gonna go in there and take everything out at once and rebuild everything at once, is how we anticipate seeing it right now. What we're gonna do is we're gonna pick sections and we're gonna replace it. We're gonna do this in partnership with the, Friends of Moss Beach Park. So the parents of the kids will have an opportunity, and the kids themselves will have an opportunity to participate in kind of what they would like to see, which is how that park was originally developed.
Excellent.
And so it's important that, these kids have an opportunity to be a part of that.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Of course.
Any other questions from the council for Nicholas? From the,
I'll
did you
spare
have a
you.
question for Nicholas? And Bill? Okay, Leonard?
Nicholas, you spoke about the restroom at Moss Beach Park. I understand, I haven't gone down to look, but I understand that the restroom has been put at the south end of the Murata Surf West Trail, but there seem to be public complaints that it's locked. Can you say anything about that?
I
It's
could not.
apparently been there for weeks or a month or something, and it's just never been unlocked?
I could ask. I don't know.
Yeah.
Murata West?
It's, next to Magellan, on the Paper Street, the Alameda, or no, Alameda, whatever.
Yeah,
The problem is these duplicated street names between Miramar and El Granado.
Leonard, if, in future meetings, if you have burning questions, send them to me ahead, and I'll
Well, I
put
only thought
everything
of it-
together and send it to Nicholas, and then he'll come with answers.
Okay, but I only thought of it while he was
All right.
speaking on that.
Bill, did you have a question for Nicholas?
Yes, something you brought up, probably something in the future, I think the council and the community would like to hear about is the grand jury report on the Devil's Slide Park. It was in the paper today, and also they actually released the report, and I glanced at it. And they kind of hit it on a couple of different things. And I spent a long time on that task force committee, and the one concern I have is that it seems like they want to wrap the fencing in bubble wrap so nobody can crawl under it or over it or through it and get hurt. And they keep mentioning that little children can do that. I don't think little children will be on the trail without a parent, so parent and guardians need to, look after that appropriately. But there's a lot of time spent on building a safe fencing structure that also didn't block the views. So the thing I'm afraid of, and the thing I'd like to ask the council to keep a close eye on, is we don't want them coming back and building, suicide barriers like they're gonna do on the Golden Gate Bridge.
Barbed wire.
To keep people out of it. The other part of the report, which I fully agree with, and we probably should have spent the $80,000 to put a call box in there, is the total lack of any kind of communications when you're in the middle of the trail there because of where the phone antennas are and where and where you are on the trail. The repeaters are, you can't get the signal out of there. And then they did point out that there's only a minimum staff, and if they're called off for something else, there won't be staff there, but I'm pretty sure you have docents there a lot of the time too. So the thing I'm more concerned about is I'd like to see the county address the issue of communications, because I think that's probably the best thing that you can do there. And I'm really afraid, I don't want to see them go overboard and try to overbuild or block views to make it unsafe, because it's never going to be totally safe no matter what. People will be able to crawl over the jump. Anyway, that was just a quick one. You can look into it and let us know.
Yeah, I'll talk with Parks Director.
Captain Mike, did you want to report?
While you're walking up, one quick thing for Nicholas on
Yeah.
Lost Beach Park. There's nothing about the bathroom or any of the other work on the Friends of Lost Beach Facebook page, so it'd be good if somebody could put it on there.
So I believe they were notified quite some time ago, and so they may have put a notification up at the time, and I don't know. I mean, there's a good chance that that's not the case. If not, then I will go ahead and make sure that the Friends of Moss Beach Park are aware of it. But I do know that Marlene, Parks Director, had spoken with them and has worked with them very closely.
Yeah. If you want to send me the details, I'll be happy to put them on that list.
Absolutely, thank you.
Sorry.
All right, good evening, members of the council, members of the community. I just want to say that we came through for us, it was a rather uneventful 4th of July holiday weekend, which is always a good thing. We're continuing with our deployment of our special enforcement unit, which consists of, we're up to 5 motorcycle officers now in my area, and we do move them throughout the county, so they're not always going to be in the same place every single day. But it affords us an opportunity to put some additional resources in various communities and move them around and try to have an impact when traffic complaints do arise or whatever the case might be, working with our partners here with the Sheriff's Office or some of our municipal law enforcement agencies as well. So the coastal community is very important to us, and it is an area which we do emphasize placing additional resources when we do have those available. And it's hard to think that it's not that far off, but we've begun our planning for the next upcoming Maverick Surf event when that takes place. I don't have any specifics on that, but again, we've started getting engaged in the planning process for that. So to try to mitigate to the greatest extent possible the impact that would have on traffic here in this area. Yes, sir.
Did you have any reports or incidents on the Devil Slide ride that happened a couple of weeks ago? Just because we've had a lot of concern about traffic and highway crossings and the impact on motorists and whatever. I know Bill and others have been concerned about that, and I'm just wondering if how it went from the CHP point of view.
I don't have any specifics on that particular event. Now, there was a ride, and I don't know, I know that ride had several different segments to it. Now, did one of those segments go through Pescadero?
Yes.
We had in that event, it was on a Sunday, we did have 2 separate bicycle collisions. One was the driver or the rider was traveling at an unsafe speed for conditions for the roadway surface that they came upon, and it was just a relatively minor injury in that event. We had a more serious event that took place that involved 3 cyclists, and what it was technically a hit and run. One of the cyclists was riding along, cut in front of 2 other cyclists. Those 2 riders went to the ground, sustained several broken bones, and the rider that was responsible fled the scene. Unfortunately, there's no license plate on the back of the bike, and they didn't bother to stop. So that investigation has not yielded who the responsible rider was. It's certainly a concern of ours, and I discussed this last night in some detail at the PMAC meeting down in Pescadero. One of the factors is we do see these permits come through for various events, but we offer opinions, but we really don't have a say in whether or not a permit's going to be approved. If it involves a state highway, it would be up to Caltrans. If it's a county road, then it would be County Public Works that would be engaged in that process. Oftentimes, many of these events, they're for nonprofit, so in a way to try to keep costs down, they don't reach out and contract with any public safety entities. They try to use volunteers to staff those to the degree that they feel is sufficient, and that's not always going to be the case. By and large, it's been my experience that most of these events, particularly the larger events, the organizers are very responsible, but we've seen as these events have become more popular, they've really attracted larger numbers of people, and I know the citizens of this community as well as the citizens of Pescadero have become very concerned with just the number of people who come into the community, and sometimes these events can almost seem like they're overwhelming with the number of resources that need to be put in place. In September, we're actually working on a contract with the organizers of the Big Kahuna event. That really starts in Santa Cruz. It doesn't come too far into San Mateo County. It goes as far as Pigeon Point and then turns around. But rather than having volunteers out on Highway 1 to assist with the riders getting across the highway, we will actually be involved in that process. One of the challenges that I face is really being able to identify the deployment of resources that are going to be necessary for these events, particularly when they don't contract with us, or if the permit doesn't come across my office and I'm not aware of the extent of what the potential organizers might envision. And what I'm left with is sometimes very short notice in which myself or our agency, the Highway Patrol and the Sheriff's Department, work collaboratively with using the resources that we have on duty. The problem with that is I have a finite number of resources on any given day, and if I'm moving additional resources to one area to another, I'm obviously pulling from one area to service another. In my CHP command, I oversee Santa Clara, San Mateo, and a portion of Alameda County, so I have a very large region, and so on any given weekend, particularly this time of year, I may have an event in Santa Clara County, one in San Mateo County. There may be a need to deploy resources to the portion of Alameda County that I oversee. So it makes it very challenging to finally know a few days in advance. Now, certainly safety is paramount, and keeping that in mind, we certainly don't want to have an event take place where there's a public safety concern. So we do what we can, but we're not always able to staff these where people might envision, well, if we could have an officer at every major intersection, that would be great. The reality of the situation is I just don't have the resources to be able to do that. And unless the event organizers work with us to contract, that affords me the ability to bring in extra officers who aren't on duty that I otherwise couldn't order to come in to be able to staff these accordingly. So I'm sorry, I know Mr. Johnson, I'm taking somewhat of a roundabout way to answer your question. We did have 2 incidents involving cyclists. If it was a closed event, if the roadway is totally closed to any traffic other than the participants of that event, while that makes it easy for us, it also, if there is a collision, we wouldn't investigate it as such because it'd be like on a racetrack. So it's that balance when these roads are open to cyclists, to pedestrians, to motor vehicle traffic that we really run into challenges in being able to balance the needs of the community with the desires and kind of expectations of the event organizers.
Thank you very much.
I know that we spoke briefly in email about the left turn lane in front of Sam's Restaurant, and I know it's not your responsibility, but you're the most responsive person we have, and I wondered about the arrows that point people to turn into the road embankment. How do we get rid of those?
I have a can of paint in my trunk, and when it gets dark, put on the camo outfit and go out there. The challenge is really, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but whether it be Caltrans, whether it be a particular public works entity, those are really the experts, so to speak, when it comes to these roadway configurations. And while oftentimes they don't make any sense when we look at them, there's certain provisions that they are obligated to follow when they go in and do roadway design changes or improvements, or something that might not be construed as an improvement. I can certainly point it out to them as I have. Again, it's nothing that I have any control over them going out and sandblasting off the pavement.
So it's Caltrans.
Caltrans, yes.
I know they have the picture of that in their manual as the appropriate arrows for what they're calling two-way left turn. But this particular two-way left turn
There's no other
is not
side.
meant for people to be in that lane going south. It's meant for people to be going north. either turning off the highway going north or turning onto the highway going north. And so the arrows in the lane pointing south, directing people to drive into the embankment, I mean, people shouldn't even be in that lane going south. So
Sure.
they need another term or something. And, you know, and I understand they got their manual, they got to do it by that, but it's like, how could anybody take this, oh, here I'm supposed to paint these lines and paint, how could anybody go home and say, what a good day's work?
Because
I
it
mean,
was in the original contract
I
that we
mean,
commented on 18 months ago
The
and said exactly
MCC
this
did
would
comment
happen.
on that, and it fell through the cracks, and you know, and as I mentioned to you, I mean, if the arrows are pointing to drive off the cliff, maybe something would be done, but it's still pretty bad to be, you know, so, any clue?
I can point it out to them, I could certainly make recommendations, but absent that, I really have no ability to,
Yeah.
you know, remove it from the roadway, and while I agree,
Who at Caltrans do you talk to about this? Is this
Well,
somebody you would know?
we're within District 4. Bijan Certipi is the
Okay.
director, so he is the head of Caltrans for this particular region. And what would likely, and probably might even be more effective than even me reaching out to them, is penning a letter from the council to Caltrans and documenting that in writing, something more substantive than just an email and some photographs, or accompanying that with a photograph.
That's very helpful. We'll work on that.
And I will tell you that the Caltrans District 4 people are very responsive, but you have to keep in mind that this particular district encompasses some significant metropolitan areas, San Francisco, Oakland, the South Bay. There's some districts within the state that are far more rural and don't have necessarily the volume of traffic infrastructure that needs to be addressed. So when these concerns come in, they do get prioritization, but when something comes up on, you know, a road that isn't as heavily traveled, say, as the Bay Bridge or Highway 80 or, you know, other portions, some people get frustrated, and I'm just trying to convey that it's not that they're not responsive. It's not that they just don't want to help. They try to get to these with the resources that they have as well. So while I certainly can agree, and I certainly will reach out to my counterparts in Caltrans, sometimes, you know, you can do stuff on an informal level and get it done faster, but oftentimes if that's not, you know, being accomplished, then you have to go to the top, and that may not necessarily happen overnight, but it's not for lack of Caltrans not wanting to be engaged or caring. It's just,
Okay.
sometimes you gotta make a little bit of noise.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think years back, I remember that there was some kind of a interpretation of a moving violation if you somehow obstruct the natural flow of traffic in a highway. So if I'm wondering if someone actually, you know, was going southbound, they saw a parking spot there, and they said, oh, you know, I'm tired of looking, and they actually tried to make a U-turn, and it turned into a 3 or 4 point, you know, backup. People would do that. I've seen crazier things. I'm wondering if those arrows would give them, you know, a little bit of leverage in night court, you know, if they had to protest that a ticketing violation. Would that be to make a U-turn on Highway 1? That would be a violation?
It wouldn't be if there's, as long as there's not doubled up, there's 2 sets of double yellow lines. That's just like having an embankment in the middle of the roadway.
That's right. Like
So the other consideration is what's the visibility, the clearance
yeah,
for
the
oncoming
distance
traffic.
of car, like if there's a car 25 feet away. that
Well,
would
if
be-
it's an unsafe turn, if it impedes somebody else's ability, like you're referring to, that would certainly be a violation. If there's
Okay.
no traffic, the driver still has to have the
Gotcha.
opportunity to see for a specified distance before they make the turn. But, you know, they don't apply the roadway markings as a means to, you know, give people, you know, it's meant to provide an enhanced level of safety. If something like this is out there and it really doesn't make sense, possibly the application just isn't appropriate for where it's put. It might have been standard in the manual. Again, not being a traffic expert, I can't speak to what their standards are. However, it may be better served if it was just removed, or, you know, I know building on the coast is somewhat challenging. I don't know if they ever envisioned that there would actually be something there that someone would someday turn into. Maybe not in any of our lifetimes, but.
That wasn't it.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Do you have a question for Mike?
Actually, something he said, but I haven't for the council.
Could
Okay,
you go
public
to
comment?
the-
When he's done, then we'll have public comment.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a question for the
Okay.
You mentioned the, I forget what term you used, but the traffic enforcement, I saw something on Half Bear Review's website, and the article seemed to focus on basically enforcement of people and vehicles, but, you know, pedestrians are also a big part of the problem. Are you gonna ticket people jaywalking at Surfers Beach across the highway, which is totally illegal?
So our enforcement involves motor vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, and it's not necessarily about ticketing people. That's a tool that we have. But it's really about having a visible presence in the area and really trying to educate people as well. I mean, if it necessitates a citation, it could be a verbal warning. We have no policy that says when our officers shall issue citations. It's left to the discretion of the individual officer. And truly, we want to work within the community as well. It's not, you know, when one particular community that my office services saw 5 motorcyclists or, you know, CHP officers rolling into their community, and they were quite concerned with, you know, are we even going to be able to drive on the roads without being ticketed? Well, that's not what we were there for, and it was about collision reduction, and it's about providing, you know, service to the community as well. So to answer your question, Mr. Warren, certainly if it's within the officer's purview, if they see a violation, they can take the appropriate enforcement action. It's trying to, you know, enhance the safety of a particular community. I mean, we'd much rather not write any tickets at Surfers Beach, but not have anybody run over and not have anybody impede traffic inappropriately and be able to cross safely and be able to enjoy all the beauty that this community has to offer. And that's really what our intended purpose is. But
My concern there is the people that don't want to wait for an opening and they just barge across and force people to stop for them.
and that's a problem. And if, you know, if they see us, they're probably not going to barge across traffic, but if they do and we're there, we certainly can take the requisite enforcement action on it. So it's not restricted exclusively to motor vehicles. So if it's in the vehicle code or penal code or health and safety code, we can enforce it.
Just one last thing that applies to that is that, you know, sometimes I think there's a regulation about how dark your windows can be tinted, but I have personally witnessed, I grew up in San Francisco, I rode my bike, and it was gospel to have the eye contact with the pedestrian and the driver. And when these front windows are tinted, you can't even see if there's anybody driving. So, anyway, that's something that, you know, I'm sure that you're aware of already, but I just thought I'd mention it. You know,
In California, you cannot have any film, so it's not even a question of how dark the material is on your forward side windows on the driver passenger side of the vehicle code. It cannot have any film. So some people actually go out and have tinted glass installed. It's very rare, but that would be allowed. But 99.9% of any tinting that we find on those windows, it's a film that's applied to the window, and we can take the appropriate enforcement action in that regard. But you're absolutely right, that eye contact is critical. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'll open public comment. The first speaker slip I have is Leonard Warren. Bill, you can be after him. Leonard, would you mind if Bill went first?
Okay.
Sorry. Just quickly, he mentioned 2 things, and I think that the council really should follow up on it. One is, he was speaking of PMAC, and they have concerns about the events and the crowds they attract and so on. And then he also mentioned the issue that some of the smaller events for nonprofits don't follow the same kind of procedure that the larger events do, where the larger events notify the CHP and they're aware of it. These smaller ones can happen without notification. So this brings me all the way back to something I told Nicholas every once in a while I would stand up here and talk about, is a process in the county for any kind of event that's going to impede the communities out here. And they should set a term and say they have to contact, you know, Caltrans and CHP if there's going to be anything on Highway 1 or anything on a state route or something like that, so that we don't have to worry where the right people are properly notified, people aware of it, and the rest of it. See, but without any process, it's hit or miss. One guy will do it right, and another event organizer may not even be aware of it. And if we had that process in place, and I think the council has to keep pushing for this, then everybody would be playing by the same rules, and the community would be aware of what's going on and what the issues are ahead of time. So I'd like to ask the council to follow up on that.
Thank you. Leonard?
at your last meeting, I mentioned a conference on dealing with sea level rise in San Mateo County, and so I attended that. There were very few people from the coast side there.
Was that the one in Foster City?
Yeah. You know, where Foster City's an inch above sea level, so it was appropriate to have it there. So a guy that I guess you'd call the keynote speaker, John Englander, it's Englander, wrote a book called High Tide on Main Street. His business card is actually the book cover, if I recall. So then he came back at the end of the thing and was hawking his book for $20. But what I'm really concerned about is afterwards I spoke to Supervisor Dave Pine and Congresswoman Jackie Spear. Supervisor Horsley had another commitment and had to leave before the end, so he wasn't there. And so I spoke to those two, and I said, the first thing that you should do when you're waist deep in a hole is stop digging. And they asked me, you know, what I meant by that in that context. And specifically what I meant is you stop permitting in places that are going to be at significant risk. And none of the high-level elected officials are willing to even consider that. So they're going to continue to issue permits, and the plan, where we're headed, and Santa Clara County's already started on this, except their planning is wrong in Santa Clara County. They're only planning for a 2-foot sea level rise, and San Mateo County's planning for 3, so this is like the railroad tracks built across country that don't meet. What we're going to end up with, if the county does what they're planning on doing, is a continuous levee on the bay side, and I'm a little less clear on what's going to be on the coast side. Obviously not a levee because we're generally higher up here, although it's interesting to note that no one from Half Moon Bay was at the seminar, and Half Moon Bay is generally lower than the unincorporated Midcoast. But the county really needs to be pressured to rethink the approach so that we don't end up with, essentially a Netherlands type thing where, we're all below sea level, underwater, surrounded by high dikes. I mean, do you want to live in a place that has no beaches because it has to be edged by dikes because things have been allowed to be built in places where they don't belong? On a different note, on the same conference, they talked about all the places that are at serious risk of sea level rise due to being built on fill, and specifically SFO was called out, and they said something which some people thought was amusing, which was that the solution to the stuff built on fill is more fill. So I think they're talking about adding fill on top of fill to solve the problem of, you did something wrong in the first place, so how do you fix it? Well, you do more of the same wrong. Doesn't make sense to me. So I think that everybody needs to get more involved in this issue, and we need to have public presentations by county officials on the planning very early in the game before we end up with being completely surrounded by levees.
Thank you, Leonard. Any other public comment? I'll close the public comment. Do council members have any announcements? Well, I got some.
Always do.
I'm sorry. The Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan for the Half Moon Bay Airport, the deadline for public comment on the environmental review documents is July 23rd. The MCC homepage has this under focus topics if you want to look at it. Actually, the hard copy of that stuff is out there on the table. The Harbor District wants to hear from the community about their priorities for Pillow Point Harbor. The meeting is tomorrow, Thursday, July 10 at 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the Oceana Hotel on Capistrano Road in Princeton. And I just wanted to say, speaking of Capistrano Road, the medians in that street are maintained by the Harbor Village. And they have seeded them with wildflowers, and it's lovely. You should check it out. The Big Wave EIR presentation by the county planner will be August 13th at 9 a.m. at the Planning Commission and at 7 p.m. here at MCC.
What time was that? What date was that?
August 13th. Pillar Point Bluff Beach and Reef BioBlitz, Sunday, July 13, 6 a.m. till noon. A BioBlitz is an intensive one-day study of biodiversity in a specific location, bringing scientists and citizen volunteers together. It starts at Pillar Point parking lot at 6 a.m. Sunday. Please carpool. The Blitz will go on for 4 hours, and then they'll meet around 10 a.m. at Cypress Meadows to review what was found. There's more information and a link to register on the MCC website. Out there at the end of West Point. Pothole parking lot. Or you can walk. Anyway, that's where they're going to meet. Okay, connectthecoastside.com is an interactive website for the comprehensive transportation management plan. The county's, this is a requirement of the 2012 Midcoast update to the local coastal program. The plan will address the cumulative traffic impacts of residential development on roads and highways in the entire Midcoast, including Half Moon Bay. You can, at this website, you can sign up for news updates and join the virtual workshop and submit comments. That's connectthecoastside.com. Okay, so that's the end of public comments. Moving on to the consent agenda. So we need to remove the minutes for June 25th, and that leaves us with the treasurer's report for today's date. Do I have a motion?
You certainly have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved unanimously.
And I want to say, it's a great job doing that treasurer's report.
It's great, what?
It's a great job. Nice to see that.
Thank you, Laura.
Lisa, could I just say something about
That
that?
job.
Just one little comment about the treasurer's report. So I looked at the treasurer's report, and I just have to say, like, I know that it was same in the last iteration of the MCC, but I'm just proud to look at that report because it's well, not only is it clear, but the things that money is being spent on and the fact that money is not being spent in general, I think is, something that the MCC should be proud of, there's $4,000, a balance of $4,000, which could be spent on, food and little parties and stuff, or not little parties, but meetings with, whatever. And I just commend the last iteration of the MCC and this one for, really just sticking to the business at hand. And I think that treasurer's report reflects that, so I just wanted to say kudos.
It's, that spreadsheet is kept up to date and it's on the website too, so anybody can see that.
Please do. Please
The,
look.
the,
May I just comment, and
Sure.
since Len is in the audience? I think he did an excellent job of, as we started taking care of the larger amounts of money on our own, of laying out the procedure and the paperwork for it. So, thank you, Len. You made my job a lot easier.
Okay, moving on to our regular agenda. Our normal order of business here is that there will be a presentation of the topic. Council members may ask clarifying questions of the presenter. Then we'll have public comment. The chair will invite a motion from the council to help focus discussion. The council will discuss and vote. The first item is, we turn on the projector. It's Midcoast Highway 1 crossings, left turns, and medians. Now, I have to say to Nicholas, I've used that term because there's been an evolution of names for this, but I think this captures it and avoids any kind of confusion, so that's why I use that. So this is going to be just a review of the difference between the concept plans and the Highway 1 safety and mobility studies and the specific project elements that the current TA-funded planning grant is limited to. And the desired outcome here is that the council will reaffirm support for the TA-funded planning and permitting project for Highway 1 medians, left turns, and crossing improvements as a near-term high priority as we continue to work with the county on refining the design of these project elements. We have new council members since all this has taken time. It's been a couple of years, so this seemed appropriate to quickly go over this. Oh, cool. Okay. So, from from the concept plans of the Highway 1 safety and mobility studies to the specific project elements of the TA-funded planning grant for crossings, turns, and medians. How did we get here? And this is about institutional memory for the path forward. Are we good? All right. The safety and mobility studies developed concept plans in a two-phase planning effort from 2009 to 2012. These background documents are available on the website to refer to, the studies themselves, the action plan, the public comments, the county response to comments, the meeting videos, and also there's a 2011 effort where Midcoast Council Committee worked to get an overcrossing or an undercrossing at the Tunnel South Portal, and that didn't work out. But it explains that, effort was expended looking into this to try and get it to happen, and it's not like it's been totally ignored. In the studies, in these concept plans, there are some complex, expensive concepts that were included as midterm options. And those were roundabouts, especially in Moss Beach, and possible overcrossing near the lighthouse. Highly complex, expensive projects that were not included were undercrossings. So at the end of this multi-year effort, the MCC commented on the final adoption of the studies, and these are excerpts from the comments. It was a bulleted letter, but these are just a few. The common themes that we heard from the community: proceed carefully, preserve the rural character of the Midcoast, prioritize simple solutions for highway safety and mobility, prioritize the East Side Parallel Trail. We've heard from Nicholas, county's already working on this. And parking proposals need further study, and indeed, the parking proposals are on hold for further study. I don't know how that study is going, but anyway. And then we identified the near-term priority of pedestrian crossings with refuge islands in each community, most importantly in Moss Beach. So the TA grant was applied for right around this time when all this was coming, the concept plans were coming together. And this was for design and permitting, crossings, left turns, and medians. And the MCC wrote a letter in support of the grant application. And I want to read this because the whole thing, so forgive me. We support the goals of the Highway 1 Safety and Mobility Improvement Study for improved traffic circulation and pedestrian bicycle safety and connectivity. Of the conceptual plans developed in the study, the most enthusiastic support from the community is for projects that improve vehicle and pedestrian bicycle safety via raised medians, well-placed left turn and merge lanes, and well-placed and designed crossings. We look forward to an early process of consultation with the MCC and community on design details. So that was 2 years ago. And as we know, the project elements are very specific. You've seen these. I won't read over this list. Another point to make: how long? So this is a near-term project. So how long is a near-term project? Now we've heard from Nicholas tonight that this grant was actually okayed in 2012, and things didn't really even start to get going at all until 2 years later. And so now it's 2014, and if we can find, have this workshop and get the community together and find a design balance for safety, traffic flow, and aesthetics, and the project is not delayed, then it will proceed. The estimate is that it will be finished in late 2015, and then, of course, we have to look for construction funding. So we're talking 2016. So this is a near-term project. And that's without stopping everything and saying, wait, let's go back to the concept plans. We need an underpass or whatever it is, without, throwing this off and saying we need to regroup. Okay, so the recommended action for tonight that I have for you is that we move that the council reaffirm support for the TA-funded planning and permitting project for Midcoast Highway 1 medians, left turns, and crossing improvements, that we continue to believe that these design elements are top priority and should be accomplished with urgency. So that's my presentation. Do we, God, I was so absorbed in that. What do I say next? Oh, I know what it was. Here, I have my crib sheet here. Nicholas, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, you pretty much hit it all. And
Okay.
I appreciate you taking the time to set this up. I think some of the background and history on this was important, so great work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did the council have any questions on what I just threw up there? Just clarifying questions at this point.
Can I just add a comment for later? And that is that it would be good to, actually, this presentation, before we have any community comments, so whenever the next community meeting that we have where the public's involved, I think that, because people come in and they don't understand what you just presented here, and I think that would really help frame it for them. But they can't ask for the world because this is a tiny piece.
Yeah, maybe a reduced number of slides, just to kind of lead in. But for this particular meeting, I wanted at least to have this discussion, at a minimum, with the council, to see if we can reach some common ground. So then at this point, open public comment.
Can I add something? I don't have any specific questions, but I need to say that, you know, I came on board, I missed some of the first charrettes and everything, but I came on board, you have the conceptual drawings, which were just, it was just mentioned, repeated over and over and over. They're just conceptual. And that was somewhat of a whole plan conceptually. And there was never really discussion about it, much specifics, and it seems like now we're jumping in and we're being forced to do the specific, and I'm seeing it as like a patchwork. I think that, you know, I don't want to interfere with getting stuff done, but I don't also, at the same, equally do not want to see a patchwork project. I think that we could make this Coastside incredibly beautiful and incredibly good circulation and have more visitors coming in and the business community happy and the residents in the community to be able to get and use and the beaches and the trails in a much more satisfying method for everybody. But it's my opinion that there should be more discussion about it. And I think we'll have an opportunity at the work session, I guess. But that's where I'm coming from. I don't like to see the patchwork.
Right, thank you. The order that I think works most efficiently here is that at this point, just clarifying questions, and then let the public have their comment, and then the council will each have a turn to speak, and that way, you know, it's not a lot of back and forth. Okay, so public comment, I have Leonard.
Quite an entrance you make.
Yeah. Do we get a dance with that?
I don't even know how to get it.
Okay, just put it under the sink.
Every time he speaks, I want to hear that theme.
I don't have a whole lot to say. I support the motion as written. And you know, in terms of patchwork, you got to start somewhere. You can't do everything at once, and so you have a master plan, and then you pick elements out of the master plan and implement them. And I sort of think we have that, even though at the presentation the consultants seem to be unaware of it or ignoring it. But you know, I think you know, Len can probably speak to the fact that we already have a plan. So, you know, let's just get moving, particularly with the center medians. I had one other specific comment I wanted to make, and now I don't remember what it was. Oh, yeah, in the earlier slide, there was the statement from Midcoast Community Council about preserving the rural character. Those overhead beams with flashing lights on them are not rural. So that has to be considered an absolute no-no under all conditions. We do not want to see those anywhere here.
Thank you. Len Erickson.
Thank you, council members. Just a couple of comments on this. One, in the overall sense, and I just want to highlight, I guess specifically to you, Dan, that between the conceptual plan and this particular project was an extended discussion by the MCC, which resulted in, I think it's about a 6-page document that has everything from high to medium to low priorities, and that as a whole represents the implementation from concept to specific. When I first got involved in this, someone from the county said, well, you know you're getting involved in a 15-year project, and I chuckled. But you can see from Lisa's timetable up there that it is very long. I mean, partly this is the fact that, in sort of response to what Kathy Matsrich said, I mean, we're not a high-income, high-revenue area, so we get things in small pieces, and when you get them, we try to hit the ones we thought were important, which is the one we're on. And it's always hard to keep that in mind, so I think your idea to bring it forward is good, and that's very well put. I have a specific question. This is really directed to Nicholas for feedback on a particular point. So I know one of the things that came out of the meeting that was done was people said, well, what happened to the raised medians? And it was observed that somehow they got lost in the shuffle. And I think it's been raised and addressed. Another point with regard to crossings that's of particular importance to me is that, and it was an important part of the concept plan itself, is connectivity of the trails that go through for pedestrians and for bicyclists. But this particular project is about crossings. So in particular, I noted that at Gray Whale Cove, there was real effort to establish a short specific trailway that was designed to go from the crossing to the trail that went down to the beach. And I felt that especially at Second and First Street, there's real need for well spelled out trails, or really they're trails or paths that get you everywhere from the south parking lot to the middle parking lot to the north parking lot, and probably deal with the fact that the restaurant owner has sort of taken over part of the Caltrans right-of-way, which could better be put to some good connecting trail use. And so the question was, I've made that both in public comment and written comment, and I just wanted to avoid having you come in September and not having addressed that. And I understand you're not here to do it, so I'm just wondering how I would get feedback as to whether that's been heard and is giving some consideration.
I can, so Len, what I can do is I'll go ahead and provide you with a written response to that. We've passed your written comments along to the consultants. As you know, not all public comments are going to be incorporated into the designs. And I know you know that's just, you know, if one person says, I want an above grade crossing, and one person says, I don't want an above grade crossing, then one person will get what they want, one person won't, right? So, but we'll pass it along to the consultant and see if that's something that is feasible and possible to add into the. Because
there in particular, I pulled that from the concept plan where they had given real specific thought to it, and I didn't view it as a controversial thing either, unlike above and below crossing. So appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Len. Bill Kehoe.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. Lisa, you sent out an email that I thought was excellent to the people that spoke at the last meeting, which is basically a version of the slides up here, but it was in prose form, and it was about a half-a-page email that just stepped through the history of it. I'd really like to see that up on the website, because anybody who is unclear about the process, it's like a 2-minute read, and you summed it up wonderfully. Anyway.
I'm not
I'll send it back to you. I kept it.
Oh, okay, thanks.
It was very good.
Was it the notes from the meeting?
Well, it was just, you just laid out the entire timeline like you did here, but more in prose.
Yeah, send it to me again, because it's too much.
You must have just been kind of drifting at midnight and it came out that way, but it was very good. I know how it can be. Anyway, I actually came to talk to support, I read this over ahead of time, support what you're saying there about let's get the stuff that everybody agreed to moving. The left-hand turn lanes, the raised medians in Moss Beach and elsewhere, the safe crossings. None of those are so major a construction plan that if a new, improved, great plan comes along in 10 years, you know, it couldn't be done over those or around those things that are there. And saying as how I've been waiting for a safe crossing in California and Moss Beach since my daughter was about 6 months old, and now she's 21 and looking at grad school. It will help me in my old age if it happens. The one thing I did notice, and I'll just bring this up, is and again, I'm focused on Moss Beach because that's where I live and I know it the best, but it would probably apply elsewhere, is besides the safe crossings, one of the original things that came out in the phase 2 of the planning, and it came up again and again as we discussed it when Len and I and Leonard and other people were on the board, is trying to eliminate some of the left-hand turn lanes in Moss Beach. Like there's one every block. And there are roads off of the highway, a block back, that could connect some. Now, I know politically, if you cut off the people at one street from taking a left so they have to go a block out of the way, there's gonna be a certain amount of flack for that. But there are certain intersections where it could easily be done, and nobody's gonna be driving more than a block or a block and a half out of the way. And it just cuts down on all that noise that you have going on through there. It would also accentuate where the pedestrian crossings are, because again, there's, you know, I think Leonard mentioned it at the last last MCC meeting, that, you know, when you put the crosswalk right at a street, you got, you know, 8 degrees of freedom to check all the different possible combinations where a car can get you from. Whereas if it was in the middle of the block, you've only got the 2. You know, maybe something like that where you just cut down on all that extra stuff. So it may not have to be right at California or some other street like that. So I fully support what the council's doing. Let's get it moving, and thank you.
Any more public comment? All right, would you? You're welcome to speak. Just tell us who you are for the secretary.
Sorry, I'm Kate Handel. I live in Moss Beach also, and I came because I care about crossing also the same place at California Street. That's where I run, and over time I'm sure my kids will become runners. My husband's a runner, and I would like them to have a way to get across the street eventually. They're 5 and 7 now, but maybe by the time they're teenagers. Yeah, we'll see. But I guess my question is that it sounds like the speed limit is an issue, the current speed limit, and so I'm wondering what needs to be done to address that. I mean, is that, I don't know how this all works, but if the speed limit is an issue for implementing the medians, then what needs to happen to change the speed limit?
This is what the consultants are working on now. As I understand it, they're conferring with Caltrans to see what we can work out. Okay.
And yeah, and just so you know, so we're working with the consultants and Caltrans right now, and so Caltrans has agreed to do, we already, you know, since the last MCC meeting and today, we've already spoken with Caltrans, and Caltrans has agreed to conduct the speed survey for us.
Okay.
And Bill will let you know when it's happening. Yeah.
Don't get the donuts.
So, yeah, so we'll let you guys know when it's happening, but, yeah, so they're gonna do the speed survey for us. We've, collected traffic counts, which will help with these projects, especially projects where you're restricting certain turning movements. Those will be extremely beneficial. We heard loud and clear, people want something at Cypress, those traffic counts will be essential for that.
Yeah.
So we have already taken the appropriate steps to start implementing the projects that we heard people ask for, specifically raised medians.
Okay.
It does take time. I've also spoken with, actually one of my counterparts, ironically enough, it's District 3 as well, down in Santa Cruz County, which has Davenport, because Davenport back in the 90s got their speed limit on Highway 1 reduced to 45. And then a subsequent speed survey allowed them to sustain that speed limit. Now, they had a fatal accident. A young girl was struck and killed on crossing Highway 1 there. And what happened was the community really gathered around that. They got CHP involved, and Caltrans reduced the speed limit. And so we haven't had that type of situation.
Okay.
But, you know, we've made it clear that we're trying to avoid that type of situation. We are, as I said earlier, we're trying to be proactive, you know, supervisors want to be proactive versus reactive. If you wait for something like that, you're too late, right? We want to be ahead of that. So we're doing everything we need to. Caltrans has been very responsive. The consultants have been great. They told you guys that night that they're going to do everything they can, and they have held to that. Supervisor Horsley told you guys we're going to slow down, and he's doing everything that he can to get this stuff going. So we're making great strides. For being this close to when that last meeting was, but, we're working away here.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back to the council now, and I just wanted to say a couple things before I turn this over to you. This is about focusing on this slide here, where people were coming up at the meeting, the meeting was about crossings, left turns, and medians, and they were saying, where are the roundabouts, where are the over and under crossings? And that is another conversation. See, that's a conversation that goes with the concept plans. And so what I'm hoping here tonight is to reaffirm our commitment to keep going on crossing turns and medians. And if people want to have roundabouts and undercrossings, we can have a separate conversation with the idea that those are not part of this project and they are longer term. And but it's not going to happen with this project. I just wanted to make that clear and hope that we have agreement on this on this proposed motion. So should we start?
Well, I'll start with a question. Do we want to make the motion to have the discussion on the motion, or just have the discussion first?
I would suggest that.
Okay, so I will make the motion as you've written it. I move that the council reaffirm support for the TA-funded planning and permitting project for Midcoast Highway 1, medians, left turns, and crossing improvements. We continue to believe these design elements are top priority and should be accomplished with urgency.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion.
I don't have anything to add to what everybody else has said.
Okay, Dan, do you have any other points?
You know I do. So, I tend to agree with what Dave just proposed, but with the caveat that we should be able to discuss how this particular project might affect something else that's going to be added in the future. We have to look at it as a whole and not as a piece. And I just feel, it just seems that we're being forced to look at each intersection as a piece, as a small patch. Because, I think the ultimate goal is to have good flow, good circulation, and to have the residents have a safe way to get across. It's that simple. And roundabouts, of course, offer a safe way to get across. It slows down traffic. Undercrossings, okay, I know we're not supposed to talk about them, but I think that they've worked in the past in situations like this, worked very well, and I think that they can work again. But at least we can talk about our situation now with the possibility of maybe in the future knowing that there might be a great crossing over here. So we don't focus so much effort into a crossing, right next to what might be the perfect location for a tunnel down the road 10 years or whatever. Or, it's, I want to say on a comment that Bill made about, all these left turns, limiting left turns, I want to say that this is another part where the whole comes into play. I'm in general not in great favor of limiting a lot of left turns going in, because if you funnel every car to get in and out in one location only, now you're going to have a long backlog of cars up the hill and cars turning one at a time. But I would be open to, I do think it would be a good idea to possibly limit some left turning if there's a great benefit to make it safer, make a convincing, compelling reason to have a pedestrian crossing there. You eliminate the left turn part of it, now you have room for a big refuge island in the middle, and it won't affect the traffic, the circulation as much. So, my point is that let's move forward, but let's please not squelch possible discussion about things that may apply to this in the future. Let's try to keep that open.
So I just pulled this slide up again to point out that the concept plans that we have developed over a number of years do include roundabouts as an option and an overcrossing near the lighthouse. These are not near term, but they're there. So it's not like, I mean, when you say you need the continuity to cover the whole thing and not do it piecemeal, we worked on a concept plan. So, I mean, it's not clear to me whether you're saying concept plan is bad, needs to be redone, or whether we go along with our concept plan, working by the action plan that we developed and approved, and eventually, someday, get these things accomplished.
Yeah, I think that the concept plan could be more specific and less conceptual.
Okay, Chris.
Okay, start your timer. I generally support that comment, and I definitely respect and support the work that previous MCC councils have done. However, I have spent a lot of time looking back through all of these documents, and what I do not like is that underpasses have been eliminated from the discussion from point one. I went through these documents. I did search for the word underpass and tunnels. They do not exist except in public comment where the public is saying, what about underpasses? Underpasses would be a good idea. I could not find anywhere in the documents you sent me any drawings of an underpass, any discussion of any underpass being put in. Furthermore, I could find no criteria that would eliminate an underpass, such as, you know, it can't be built in this site, we don't have the money. I could not find any specific details. And in fact, in the LCP, page 2.21, under the section improvements for bicycles and pedestrian trails, G, unless a suitable off-highway alternative already exists or is being provided as part of any new or improved roadway project other than repair and maintenance of existing facilities and consistent with AB 1396, require that Caltrans incorporate the following provisions. One of which is the most appropriate, safe, feasible crossings either at grade, above, or below ground. So even the, and this is also in another section of the LCP, even the LCP indicates that under crossings are possible. And so it's really frustrating to me that from day one, under crossings for some reason have been off the table for discussion. We're not going to discuss that. We're not going to look at it. It's not part of the discussion. And then a circular logic develops, whereas, you know, the community never said it. We never agreed on undercrossings, and so therefore they didn't come in the plans. That's because it's been told from day one that it's not allowed for discussion. So I am really frustrated and unhappy because if we're talking about congestion, safe highway crossing, and retaining the rural beauty without a bunch of flashing lights and signs, then an undercrossing is the #1 thing that would solve all of those problems. And so to have it just eliminated from discussion and then saying, see, there's no discussion of it, there's no discussion of it, so why are we discussing it? It can't be discussed, it can't be done. I could not find why it couldn't be done. I understand we're short term and we're trying to get things done, but if it's taken 5-7 years to get to this point, I'm sorry, Bill, but whatever we get out of this, that's all we're getting for the next 20 years. And so if we pass on undercrossings at this point, it's never going to happen, and we're going to have more congestion and more problems and some painted lines and some flashing signs that don't go with the character of this community are not a long-term solution that I feel is going to work. And I just cannot find any specific reasons why undercrossings were taken out of the discussion right off the bat. And so that's my frustration with this. That said, something's better than nothing.
Laura.
That's my time.
Wow, I have to calm down now.
Well, I'm pretty frustrated about it, yeah.
Do you want to say yours? You want to let Len speak to?
I'll speak first, and then I'll give you yours. You know, at the Highway 1 meeting that we had in Montera, I talked about the difficulty of this is a balance that we have to make between pedestrian safety, how does something look, does it fit in with our ambiance, and then traffic flow. And one of the most important pieces I left out was finances. And that just came to me as we're talking about the TA grant. And Nicholas, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that you went after the TA grant in an attempt to bring to fruition some part of our concept plan. Is that?
We went to the TA and submitted an application
Uh-huh.
that was an application that was developed in partnership with the MCC, looking for to develop the pedestrian crossings, raised medians, and left turn lanes out of the Highway 1 study.
Because we thought that was something that we could get done.
Right, that was what we considered short-term. And I think we probably all had a different perspective as to what short-term was.
We know now.
We now know what short-term really means. When I saw the term midterm up there, I said, "Oh my God!" I'm afraid to know what that duration is. But yeah, we decided collectively that that was the best approach. That we were going to get funds to do those projects. I mean, Len, you may recall that Sunday conference call. I think. Yeah,
Right
we
here.
We had a Sunday conference call to finalize the application before submitting it. So, yeah, I mean, that was an application development partnership because we felt those were our best opportunities to improve congestion and improve pedestrian safety. And we still believe that. Well, Supervisor Horsley and his office still believes that. And we hope you guys do too.
I fully understand your frustration, and when I first came on the council and they were in the middle of this project, I was in the same place you are. We need this, we need that. Well, it was already past the time where that part of the planning had been done. So it's kind of like coming to this place and saying, oh, wait, let's go back here. And my understanding is there isn't any funding for that. So in terms of what needs to be accomplished to get safe crossings. But at any rate, one of the things you see happening here is you have a long-term project. People don't, I think what you put up here was fantastic because we totally lose track of where it started and what piece we're in because time does go by like this. People leave the council, people leave the community that were involved initially. So one of the things that I would like to impress upon people is that you can get a sign up for RSS feed on the Midcoast community website. You may not be interested in every project that comes along, but if you are interested, for example, in the Highway 1 program, you'll be notified every time something comes up about that, thanks to our webmaster. So I would encourage everyone to go hit that button on the website. And then once again, I just want to emphasize, whenever we have a meeting about this with the public, I think this should just be a prerequisite that this is briefly explained as you've done so well here. Answers?
Len, did you want to? You had a turn.
One, okay.
Len.
So, just a couple of responses to the points that Dan, you and Chris raised, which are good points. First of all, there was never, at the outset of the study, a fiat that said no undercrossings, no overcrossings. And a couple of points on that. So one of the early things that happened when the first consulting team came in is the children of El Granada School took the consultants to where there is an undercrossing, through a creek, and they go under it. Also at El Granada and Murata serve east and west. You have one place where there's a fair grade separation already, which could be looked at. So, and those were never brought up as, well, we can't do it there. So that's at the front end of the study. At the back end, there was a concerted effort to look at other than an at-grade crossing without a light at the South Portal. We met several times with Caltrans. We met in Bijan Sartipi's office, as a matter of fact. His consultants prepared both an undercrossing and an overcrossing option there, neither of which was possible because of lack of right-of-way access to the property there. But basically, when you get to the particular crossings, that's the time to bring it up. That's why what I've advocated, basically, as we march from north to south, at each intersection you can look at it. At South Portal, there was an extended process. We didn't come away from it, but it wasn't that it wasn't looked at. At Gray Whale Cove, you're there now, and if you felt that's the time to bring it up. I don't think anybody's talked about an under or overcrossing at 2nd Street. In Moss Beach, to answer your point, Dan, I think if you looked at the economics of it, if you were to put, let's say, a crossing at California and observe how often was it used, if you got to the point that there was a steady stream of people there, one every 30 seconds, that'd become an argument for having an undercrossing. But certainly, there's no way that an undercrossing, having a crossing of the type we're designing here would cause somebody to come up and say, well, you can't possibly ever put an undercrossing there because we have a surface crossing.
Yeah,
So and I think you know that it's much more expensive to do it, much more cumbersome. So that is a longer-term option, but neither of you should feel that they're not there in the process, and they're mentioned as places at least it's cited. And, you know, in fact, it was called out specifically as a possible overcrossing at the lighthouse. So I think you just have to keep in mind, you know, what this study is bringing to the fore as a tool. And we tried to say it's in the context of long, short, medium range, you know, you've got all of those considered there. So there's nothing in that that would say what you just said isn't a perfect fit, because I think you'd agree that if you said, well, which should we put in first to have a crossing, which would be cheaper, which would be easier to do, surface crossing would be it. But there's no way you should ever think that somebody would then come back and say, well, we've obliterated any possibility of an undercrossing. So, patience.
Okay, I'll have a turn here. Dan had showed me some very attractive pictures of a undercrossing in Davis, and I looked online. There's also, so there's an undercrossing under Highway 80 there, and it's not ADA compliant, it's a little too steep, but it's older. And it's going under a freeway that I think is at least 6 lanes wide. Davis has a population of 66,000 people. They also have another underpass under Covell Boulevard, I don't know, whatever, the other street goes north and south. That too has got to be at least 8 lanes wide with a median, and large population of people on bikes and all. So, you know, we say here we're a rural area, small town, and so the economics of it, the expense of that, you know, in Davis with 66,000 people, it was deemed warranted, and it was under freeways. So maybe, you know, I would conceive of, when you think of the Midcoast, what we're at between 11 and 12,000 people, well, maybe if all the population crossed the highway in one place, then, you know, it would be warranted. My point to the people who are frustrated about the lack of underpasses is that, here's the question to ask. Is it important to slow down or stop or not get a crossing now to push for an underpass there, or is it more important to get something sooner, near term, that will improve the situation, that will, as Len said, not preclude some future higher population or whatever justification underpass, you know, that to focus now on what, and the other thing too, okay, I've heard a lot over the years, people complain that the county is not responsive to us, and we need our own city. Well, if we had our own city, we would have to figure out this balance in order to get anything done. So as we approach a workshop, which the supervisor is going to facilitate, to meet with the consultants, if we come there and each person speaks and they say, I want an underpass, or I want this, or I want that, then what are the people in charge of doing something for us supposed to make of that? If we want to argue in front of them and then figure, well, Daddy will decide and do something, is that what we want? You know, I think we need to work on some, make some effort to come together to find a balance. Thank you, Laura. So that the comments that we've heard from the community, so that it can best accommodate the main issues that we talked about. So that's my point. Anybody else have something short to say before we just vote on this motion?
Well, I just want to say in response to that, my frustration is that when I go and look at these documents, analysis proposal 2011, Highway 1 Safety and Mobility Action Plan, Phase 1, Phase 2, and I search for the word underpass or tunnel. Yes, Len, I saw the discussion of the tunnel, but I feel like that discussion with the Devil's Slide Tunnel and what was wanted up there is a kind of a different can of worms than some of these crossings that we're talking about here, and I'm not talking about an underpass at every crossing, okay? That's another thing. Like, we're not talking about a whole thing of underpasses. We're talking about maybe a couple at Gray Whale Cove and Surfers Beach that are totally logical. And my frustration is, when I search for those words in these documents, they are not there except in the public comment from the public. And so my not being there, that's where it's lost on me. It seems like the underpass tunnel idea was not discussed or discounted before there was any discussion. And when we talk about expense and stuff, I looked at the analysis and proposal 2011 doc, slide 93 for Surfers Beach and El Granada. Option E with a diagram and a drawing and everything is talking about shifting Highway 1 to the east and creating parking for 150 vehicles. That's shifting the whole roadway, creating parking. And my question I wrote here is, so that's less intensive and expensive than a tunnel through there? I mean, so we're talking about, what I'm saying is, I hear what everybody's saying, but my feeling from looking at all these I cannot find what the reason is why underpasses are not even discussed in any of these documents by people other than the public. And so now we're here to the point where we're saying, well, you know, we got the project plan, so we should make a decision. I agree, something's better than nothing, but I repeat what I said earlier, which is it's taken this long to get possibly some raised medians and some left turns. If we get this, we're not getting anything else for a long time. And so therefore, it bothers me that the best possible solution was discounted at the beginning and then not included in the discussion or any of the plans, and then pointed to there's no plan, people weren't talking about it because they were told we're not doing it, or it's not happening, or there was nothing in the plans.
Okay, can I?
I looked at the plans, there's nothing in it.
Can I answer?
Yes.
Okay. I understand it's a challenge if you weren't there at the time. And I tried to point you to places where you would find this information. Let me speak. I had memories of hearing this from some traffic person and seeing slides, and I looked through all this stuff and I don't find it, and I found those earlier work slides, and there was one in there about overcrossings, but I remember them saying something and I couldn't find it. So I remember it, but I can't point you to it. And so perhaps we can get some concise analysis from somebody to explain the limitations at Surfers Beach for an undercrossing. Basically, as I look at it and I look at the elevations there, an undercrossing at that point would basically be a culvert letting the ocean in to flood the Burnham Strip. But I wanted to fill in. No, I want the alternatives that you saw. This was very contentious in the Phase 1 study. When we came back to see the plans, and they showed us these plans, and the two alternatives you're looking at, those were toned down for Phase 2. The ones they showed us for the Highway 1 treatment for Phase 1 had radical movement of the highway in several stages, and it was a definite no-go. The people in El Granada did not want that highway moved. And so the reaction to that from the county, and it doesn't even take that much of a reaction. It only takes about 9 people saying, no roundabouts, no round, and the county says, okay, and they go away. And then you do get nothing for a while. So I think probably the thing to do would be to I've heard some, I don't remember who I was talking about like Gray Whale Cove, the cliff stability there. Was it you? I don't know, it was you. The cliff stability, the grade changes, whatever the issues are there, if someone could just write up a list of the constraints at those 2 locations. Actually, as it turns out, Supervisor Horsey says he didn't want to do anything about Surfers Beach now. I think Leonard scared him off. So that leaves Gray Whale Cove. And then the question would be, as far as the lighthouse crossing, if people feel that the at-grade crossing is unsafe, do we want to just put that aside for now and wait for a future overcrossing? Because that isn't going to happen now. So that's the question. Is it worthwhile to put the crossing there now? Because actually the MCC noticed it wasn't in the thing. We asked it to be put in there. So now if most people think that's not safe and we need to wait for an overcrossing, then that's a decision to make. I think that would probably be a number of people on either side of that issue. So anybody else have anything they really need to get wrapped up now? Dave?
I'm just gonna make this really short. It's a different way of saying part of what you just said. But, you know, people are crossing the highway today. They're not crossing in huge numbers today. It's not safe. So I think if we formalize the crossings and increase the safety somewhat and get something done relatively soon, that's a much higher priority than spending another 2 years trying to figure out a different and more expensive and longer term solution, because the two can go on in parallel. And so I really do appreciate the way you put the motion, because I think it is important to get something done that improves it somewhat.
This has been a need voiced by the community for decades.
We have a motion on the table, and I believe we,
So, just one more thing, please.
I'm not the chair.
Okay, one last thing, please be
I'm
brief.
nodding.
Okay, so, you know, I've heard, as far as what's gonna get done, you know, nothing's set in concrete. I've heard that, you know, the discussion about the overcrossing at the South Portal, it sounded like the whole overcrossing, undercrossing kind of stopped for the whole Midcoast at the tunnel. That's what it seems like to me. And I'm glad that, you know, at least be able to talk about it. And you mentioned, oh, there's not enough people crossing the road. Well, come on. It's not safe to cross the road, so most people don't. Only the ones that are the healthiest, that can get across there the fastest, are the ones using it in the truck. The rest of people feel that they're stuck in their house.
Dan,
So-
I'm sorry, but we've spent a lot of time on this. Are you okay? This isn't actually part of the motion. The motion's really clear, just are we going to go ahead with what we said 2 years ago? I would like to call the question. Is that all right? Everybody else ready to vote?
Can we repeat the motion? Because I wanted to have,
Yes.
you know,
I can read it
open and,
Their motion is, I move the council reaffirm support for the TA-funded planning and permitting project for Midcoast Highway 1 medians, left turns, and crossing improvements. We continue to believe that these design elements are top priority and should be accomplished with urgency.
I'm gonna assume that we're gonna be able to have open discussions, so I'm not gonna get in the way with that. I'll vote for it.
All in favor?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses, unanimous. The next item on the agenda, I need my projector up again. Pillar Point Harbor Community Priorities. The San Mateo County Harbor District is developing man, I can't do everything at once here, hold on. I'm gonna change my slides.
Yeah, if we don't start the medium-term stuff now, it will be 20 years. So we can start the medium-term stuff now, we just don't want to real short-term stuff.
I know, and that's why I voted for it, but I just feel like, I feel very conflicted.
All right, so we're getting started here. Pillar Point Harbor Community Priorities. We have a preliminary draft letter to consider to submit to the Harbor District on this. So I just wanted to show this presentation. I put this together a couple of years ago, and it's been significantly updated. And I may go a little quickly, but if you're interested in perusing it, it's on the website. So history, these are photos from the Coastal Records Act. This is 1972. It shows the first phase. The outer breakwater has been built, and you see the first section of Phil, Bulkhead, and Johnson Pier. That was done in the 60s. Then once it got the outer, they had a grand plan, the 1960 master plan for, you wouldn't believe the kind of development with inside the outer harbor. And then once they got that breakwater done, they realized they still had stormways there, and so they couldn't do the docks and whatever they had in mind. So things stalled out kind of, and you can see they've just sort of added some parking here in this decade, and not that much new. So in the 80s, they got a coastal development permit to do the inner harbor, and you can see this photos from 86. You've got the inner breakwaters built, and they're just putting in the floating docks. You can see some of them are still, and they did dredgings for these berths, and they got permission to put the dredged material on Perch Beach. You can see it real bright there, that white, and that raised the level up there. By 1993, basically, this is the configuration that we have. By this time, the boat launch ramp, which used to be at the main foot of the main pier, was moved over and enlarged just outside the east inner breakwater. And there's a boat trailer parking lot uphill and a new road out to the boat launch ramp. There's the paved coastal trail from the surface beach over to the boat launch ramp, and it's pretty much what you have there today. Going back in time a little bit, this is to show you the east harbor, the inner harbor east shoreline. Before the inner breakwater, you can see that shoreline is just a natural sandy beach, the whole length of it. And if you look particularly right next to, so right below it, yeah, you can see in '86 after they did the dredging, you see Perch Beach now is raised up and it's got this material there. And then next,
Did they dredge from the right and dump it? It looks like
they dredged where the berths, where the floating berths are, they dredged there. Within the inner harbor. And it's not mentioned here, but they also were putting the dredge material over there just inside the outer breakwater. They didn't have permission for that at all. They got in trouble, but anyway.
Are those two photos of the same scale?
I did the best I could. Close enough.
I didn't see the breakwater at all.
No, they're pictures taken 10 years apart, and I did the best I could. The top picture shows the building. Okay. Oh, this isn't important. We can talk about this later.
Leonard, you can't holler out in the middle.
It's not the real point of where we're going. I'm trying to give you some background for the letter. Okay, so this is recently, and so the inner harbor east shoreline, you've got Perch Beach there. You see the kayaks on the beach. It's a safe and popular place for kayaking, paddleboarding, wildlife viewing. The harbor district still has a priority for this Perch Beach for a bulkhead along the front, fill it up to 18 feet in elevation, pave and develop. Go. Okay. This is Perch Beach, the kayak stand there, popular place, coastal access, very nice. Actually, these pictures were taken before the last dredging event. There's been a lot more fill put on there now. You see the coastal trail going across. And then between Perch Beach and the breakwater, so there's this wetland area that goes along. The coastal trail goes along there, and this was mitigation, partial mitigation for the launch ramp development, and so this is supposed to be there like that as habitat. Okay, so the letter talks about over the last 10 to 15 years, the district record of permits and consulting contracts reveals harbor development projects repeatedly started, installed, So this is basically what I'm drawing from, and and I read back through their old minutes and whatnot, and so they had their master plan in 1991, around the time they were doing that, moving that boat launch ramp, and they had all kinds of plans for how they were going to develop the, Perch Beach and all this stuff. And most of that, of course, has not happened, fortunately. In 2000, they paid a consultant to do the permitting, the whole thing for this two-story building, 5,200 square feet on Perch Beach. They got the permits approved, never built it, permits expired, nothing. 2004, they're back with the same location, smaller building. They got their CDP, they got their building permit, they put it out to bid. Oh, it's too expensive, we can't afford it, nothing. 2005, 40 berth and haul out project. 40 berth, they're allowed to expand the harbor with X number of berths that they've never actually done. It's because the harbor's never full. So they paid the consultant to work on that. 2008, they had the report that said the haul out facility wasn't feasible. Oh, great, they said we can extend the bulkhead even further and develop even more. And they talked about another two-story development there, same location as those other two. 2010, they're talking about, the Perch Beach Committee, Tucker and Paravano, agreed to reactivate the consultant contract to plan the bulkhead. Their idea was to get that done in 12 to 18 months. That was in 2010. 2011, they authorized detailed bulkhead design from some consultant. Then they had Then they had a public meeting, and the public clearly said they preferred to have this left as a recreational area. And then in 2013, there was the third dredging disposal event from the launch ramp. They have to keep dredging, that fills in. And now the level of Perch Beach is just about, I call it pre-development dredge disposal. They're just about up to the level they wanted to begin with. And the two previous dredging events, they did it without permits. Each time, at regular intervals, like 6 or 7 years, they say, oh, it's an emergency. We have to dredge this right now. And, okay. So that's just, I'm just trying to support the stuff in the letter. So this is the plans the consultants did in 2007 for Perch Beach. It shows the parking lot and a restroom and a pier offshore, a new pier. And by 2010, the plans, the building has gone up to 16,500 square feet, and the kayak facility is shunted over to the side, and they're supposed to launch on this concrete ramp. 2011, the building's gotten a little smaller, but still bulkhead fill. At this point, they got a cost estimate for just the bulkhead and the fill. $3.1 million would have cost. And in January 2012, up until that time, they had spent $309,000 on consultant design fees. And that was, 2.5 years ago. And nothing.
When you say up until that time, are you adding all the projects up, or where did you get the
I
figure?
got that number from document requests that Sabrina sent to me. Basically, she asked for all the invoices from the consultant, and she sent that to me in January 2012. That's the cutoff date I have.
Did you mean for that specific project, or you meant for?
That specific project.
Oh, okay, for that specific one, okay.
Perch Beach, bulkhead, and development, that's what they had spent up until that time. So, 2012, so despite the public meeting and the Harbor District said, oh, okay, we won't put our admin building there, we'll put it over in the parking lot, but they still said they were gonna pave and fill Perch Beach. Okay, so then we got into this thing with the dredging, because they were gonna dredge the launch ramp, and they had this erosion problem over at the West Shoreline Trail, and it's just the same amount of dredged material that they were taking out of that launch ramp that they could have used over there, and they just kept that whole West Trail under wraps and went to the Coastal Commission and said, we've got to put our dredge on Perch Beach, we've got to do it, it's an emergency. And so that's what happened. And then the Coastal Commission told them, and they let them do it. They said, okay, but you've got to come up with a dredging plan with some beneficial use for your material. So they did come up with that plan, and these locations in the Inner Harbor, they're still saying that's where they want to put it. The IH designation, that's Perch Beach, and then that's the wetlands next to it. And they're thinking, oh, that'd be great. That would be beneficial, because we could fill for development and then mitigate for that. And so the district priority is to fill and mitigate, and the public wants sand nourishment of eroding beaches, and that's another issue brought up in the letter, because we've taken this up, we've written to them before about this. And this is just more of the West Shoreline Trail, and they asked for the engineer, they paid the engineer to do this study on this repair, and they didn't even ask them for a beach nourishment alternative. They just said, give us a couple of examples of armoring. And then they got that report, and then they sat on it. Didn't even bring it to the commission, just sat on it for a whole year while they said they had to put the dredge on Perch Beach. Anyway, so it still looks like this, well, it probably looks a little worse now. But now they are talking to the Coastal Commission finally, and they're saying, oh, we got to do this one emergency part here. Well, at this point, it really sort of has become, anyway, whatever. So the West Trail is in the letter. The Harbor District admin building, from the 60s until 2004, for 40 years, the administration people shared that harbor master building. Worked fine. And then in 2004, the manager said, oh, we're too crowded here. We got to move to rented quarters over at Oyster Point. So it was a contentious decision, 3-2, but they approved the move with the condition that within 5 years, they would come back to the coast to a building that would be purchased or built. And that was 10 years ago. And, okay, so then, as you know, this also flows into the issue of the development on Perch Beach, because they're all trying to get some fantastic building there, and that would solve their admin building problem, but none of that panned out. Oh, the other thing is that during this time, they've been selling some of their surplus land. They owned a whole chunk of the Burnham Strip. They sold that to Granada Sanitary. They earmarked the funds from that sale to be saved for their admin building. And they also sold the land where they used to own the place where the fire station is. They used to own that land, and they sold that. And so they had a total of $1.25 million in this pot for their admin building. And I notice now in their financial statements that they don't have that much in that pot anymore, and that's because they drew from that pot to pay the consultant who was working on the design of the admin building they were going to put in parking lot B. This is very frustrating. Okay, so they still own this parcel over by the post office, and they say that that's not suitable for their admin building, so that's too bad. Who knows what's going to happen with that? I won't go into that subject. Okay, so at Surfers Beach, I wanted to show you this comparison. 72, you see this big dirt parking lot for beach parking at Surfers Beach. You see the bathroom there, and the access to the shoreline, either outside the harbor or inside the harbor. I can remember coming over here in the 80s with my windsurfer and pulling in there, and going into the harbor. It was easy to pull off the highway and park there. So anyway, oh, and then it was allowed for RV parks to park there at night. And so here we are, 72, 79, 93, still. It's this public use area, and it has a bathroom. So now we have, so in 1998 was when they leased it out and the lessee did the improvements on the RV park, and then they were supposed to make this day use lot. And the lease is quoted in the letter about the bathroom and the amenities for the day use lot, which have not happened and have been over and over repeatedly requested. And then, they started charging the $10 parking fee there. Of course, everybody just stopped parking in there, and they all park out on the highway. And not only that, all the towing signs are very ugly. So the Harbor District has had this in their priorities for a number of years. I've seen it there. And in the manager's report, the priority is to start charging for parking in the whole harbor. And in the manager's report, he always says nothing to report. So they made no progress on it, which was good. But I think they're getting really close. And so I can just imagine what this will do. And this has come up, and I mentioned at the Princeton Planning, the advisory committee, once they do that, you're talking about, the Princeton planning effort, they're talking about, well, what parking do we have in Princeton? How much is needed? Where does it need to be? And if the Harbor District just goes off and does this, oh, we need the money, it's just going to impact all of Princeton. So that was also that request not to do that in the letter. I think this boatyard issue is just, if you're interested in that, it's just another sad story of poor choices. Anyway, so Romeo Pier. This was purchased, they used to rent it for a couple of decades, and there was a fish buyer out there on the pier, and then they were renting the pier from Romeo, and then they decided to buy it in '96, $185,000, and they were limited to how many cars could access the pier because they have to cross through Romeo's property. And so a couple of years, not long after they bought it, a truck going out there, not a very big truck, started to fall through the deck. So they closed it, and Peter Grinnell told me, he said, actually, it worked out pretty good, because right at that time, one of the fish buyers on Johnson Pier was leaving, so this fish buyer moved over there, so that worked out fine. Then they closed it, and at that time, they did underwater survey, and a whole bunch of those pilings that didn't even reach the ground anymore to hold the thing up. And so it's just sitting there, and they even, then they terminated the license agreement, so they couldn't even access the pier. If they wanted to take.
This was in 98 that they did the underwater.
Yeah. And the underwater thing where the piers didn't reach the ground, that was in 98. So 2010, they decided they didn't want to pay for this agreement to access the pier. And basically, they only bought this pier because if they wanted to build a different pier, the Coastal Commission, they considered that fill. And so they would need to mitigate for that. And the idea was if they bought this pier and tore it down, then they could say, well, we can build a new pier, we've mitigated for the new pier. Well, this is pretty expensive mitigation. I don't know what the alternative would have been, but here they were, 185 grand for this thing. Now they're faced with an estimate for what it would cost to remove it, over $500,000. And so anyhow, and now they say they don't have the money. So there it sits. And
Yeah, they rescinded the 61,000 for the study.
Even that.
To the grand jury.
even that. So here's the picture. You can see the boards are already fallen in the water. And Scott Grindy said the building out on the end is unstable. I assume that means it could just fall over at any time.
It looks like it from underneath.
So this is the last slide. Be happy. So there's more information, background documents and stuff on the website. If you're interested, it's there. Basically, the Harbor District's had a rocky history. They try to dissolve it a number of times, 66, 77, whatever. I think I even missed a few. And as you may have heard, the grand jury report released today also recommends that they dissolve it, but that doesn't mean that will happen, because obviously the Harbor Commission and the Harbor District is very tenacious about keeping themselves going. So that's that. And the letter, I assume you have all read it. Would you like me to hit the high points, or do you have any questions?
I have a question. What is their motivation around this building?
The
this is
admin
gonna-
building?
Yes, this is going on for so many years.
I don't know. How's that for a short answer?
Oh, okay.
Bureaucracies are self-perpetuating.
Here you go.
What?
Bureaucracies are self-perpetuating.
Thank you,
They have a
Nicholas.
survival instinct.
I want to point out a couple of things. So the letter, like I say, it says here, these are initial comments, and they include as examples issues that we have previously brought to your attention. So this does not preclude, and certainly, I would assume it won't, that we would have a follow-up letter, and we will hear people at the meeting tomorrow, and other discussion and other things will come up, and there could be a follow-up letter from us. The question being, is it worth it to approve this now? Is it good enough? Or, should we wait and do something all of a piece later?
And do what? I'm sorry.
Something all of a piece later?
All of a piece.
One bigger letter.
Gotcha.
What I'm saying is should we approve this letter, or should we take it back to the drawing board?
I'm in favor personally of getting something in for the strategic meeting
For
tomorrow.
the meeting tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
I second that.
Nodding, I'm hearing nodding. Should we have public comment here on this? Sorry, just come up. I'm sure Leonard put in too.
It doesn't mean the timer doesn't start.
I think I can do it short. Once again, Lisa, excellent job here. I read this over ahead of time. My big concern and what I remember most from the last time they had the meeting over there at either the yacht club or maybe it was the Maverick Room or whatever, is the public was outraged, like you said, on any kind of buildings going up on Perch Beach. But as you point out, this slowly filling it in and kind of doing it below the radar, as much as could be below the radar, is that plan is still in action. They're eventually unless they get stopped. So the one thing I would say about the letter is I glanced over it, I didn't see a call out on Perch Beach. And maybe not this letter, but next time, of really, and I wish Carl May was here, because every time you pour a yard of concrete along the ocean, you remove access for people who really want to use that ocean, whether it's beach access or launching their own little boat off of there or whatever to go paddling out there. It's not what you want on a seashore. And they want to do it. That bulkhead for a parking lot is just the precursor to a building that will block the views, just like we keep having here. And they seem to keep, as you pointed out, moving towards it over and over and over again. So I certainly agree with what they said is, send this letter and send many more. Send one on Perch Beach specifically. And the idea of them charging for parking, this past weekend I happened to go down there with my wife just to take a walk out on the pier and look at the ocean. And it was a sunny weekend and it was just jammed. There was very few parking places down by where Kitch Joanne's and that is. Even half of the parking lot up where the fishermen keep their gear was filled. And then all of downtown Princeton was pretty much filled because I came in through Mezzaluna, that little north part of Capistrano, and people driving around looking for parking places. If they were to push that out, it wouldn't just be Princeton that would be overflowing. It'd be the front line of El Granada too. And that's, for what? People come out here, because it is cheap. They don't have to pay for parking. You go any place else, you got to pay for parking. But it gives them access to the water. And they seem to be trying to kill, basically, the golden goose here. They want to remove everybody from the water, and then they want to charge them so they can see what they used to be able to see for free. So,
But they use the money responsibly.
yeah, the grand jury, I think, agreed with that. Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff. Well, I think you saw the article in the Half Bay Review. Maybe it's going to a private bank someplace.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I haven't read the grand jury report yet. I guess it came out, today?
Today.
But I understand it's, let's see, the word that was used is scathing.
Yes.
But the harbor commissioners don't care because 3 of them are there only to collect their, between the 3 of them, $60,000 a year in health care benefits. That's the only reason they're on the commission, and they're the ones that protect the general manager, and the general manager is the one who's responsible for all of the wrongs that Lisa just detailed. It all comes down to that general manager. So I support sending the letter as written immediately, and you can always follow up with other letters, but I think this has to go out right now. In terms of the day use section of the RV lot, they put a $10 price tag on there specifically to discourage visitors from parking there because it's being used by overflow parking for the excess vehicles for the people who are illegally permanent residents of the RV section. That's legally limited to 29 consecutive days and no more than 90 days a year. But there are permanent residents there. The same concessionaire who operates the RV lot owns the Monster Hotel up in Princeton.
Let's not go there, okay? We don't need to go there.
He is providing
All right.
affordable living space for the people that he employs that can't afford to live anywhere else on the coast side. But it is all illegal. And so that leads directly to why there is a wall of trees that are blocking the ocean view from El Granada, because those people think that's their home, they want their privacy. The night lighting there is abominable. Go up to Alhambra over here and try and look out at night, and it's like somebody is shining the sun directly in your eye. They have unshielded lights there. So, it's kind of too late to really edit this letter, but I would really like to see them specifically called out on the night lighting, which is...
I'm working on a white paper on the RV park.
Okay, I would...
The lighting is, yeah, it's all there.
I would be interested in collaborating or at least reviewing it with you.
Sure, I'll send it to you.
And
How
I guess the last,
I was thinking actually of shooting it over to Joel and see what he could accomplish before we even bring it up, but whatever. Yeah, I'll show it to you.
the last comment I have is, in terms of what it used to be like 20 years ago to live in El Granada, we have this continual barrage of assaults, and it's death by 1,000 cuts. El Granada is being destroyed by the strand of Half Moon Bay that goes up all the way to the restaurant. And so they've allowed the hotel there to violate the CDP and plant a wall of trees at the hotel. Then they look the other way, and the Harbor District
We'll
looks the other way.
agendize that and talk about it, okay, Lenny?
Okay,
All right.
thank you, and I'll say, I also agree with Bill's comments, and good job on the letter and all the rest of the research and the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I ditto that.
Yes,
Lisa, you did a
same
great
here.
job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a couple of emails from people that I also forwarded to. Sabrina said it was a good letter. Lenny Roberts said it was a good letter. We have Neil Merrilees is out of town. He said, excellent presentation. And then he had some priorities of his own, which a couple of these are beach nourishment. He's prioritizing beaches. And then he's talking about the hemorrhaging of the tax dollars and the office and not building on. But basically, these are more specific things. Like I say, we do a follow-up letter. And Keith Mangold also said the document looks great, and he also had a requested policy about removing derelict boats. So we'll save all this, and close the public comment. Any further discussion on the council?
I would like to put a motion on the table that we approve the letter as written.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, that
So-
really was
Good job.
perfect.
Yes, thank
I-
you.
Thank you, Lisa.
So I assume I'm free to read headings or excerpts from this tomorrow night, or whatever? I don't want
It's a
to.
council
Sure.
letter, I think it's.
Definitely.
I don't want to bore people. Maybe I should enroll with 2 people and we can read the whole thing between the 3 of us. I don't know, I'll think about it.
Maybe
Um,
make the points. I don't think you have to.
Yeah,
read
just the
it.
bolded parts,
And
probably.
I
Yeah.
think you can read it as an official MCC. thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
a
I
good
would.
point, yeah.
I would.
and then as chair, you could actually read it from the MCC.
I think that's assumed. You approve this letter, then I am empowered to go to whoever and say, here, this is from the MCC, and read all or part. Yeah, I don't think we need to vote separately on that. All right, so next agenda item, council activity. Anybody have anything to report?
So I did the Devil Slide ride, and it was very good.
Did you have a flag on the back?
I did not have a flag, but I did have a
We
flasher.
all asked him that.
Flasher and a mirror, and I mentioned, because I'm proud that I did it, but I also mentioned it in the public, or I asked Captain Mascourage to speak to it, because I'm all just generally in favor of bike stuff, but comments from people have kind of made me aware, like, look a little closely, and it does seem like, because he mentioned the bike act, that was a different event the next day. Because I had my eye out on this event and the crossings and where they put the aid stations, and I think this event had some very skilled, experienced cyclists, and so I didn't see any problems. And I thought they handled it really well. And so I just wanted to make a statement that that your idea of having a traffic management plan or an action plan for the event is a good idea, because not every event is the same, and we can't paint them all with the same brush. There are some really sketchy weekly operated events, and there are some really good ones. And my general comment, which I'll put a disclaimer on, of Diane Conte offered me to comp me on this, but I declined that and paid my own money to enter, because I believe in Parka. But so I'm not a paid spokesman. But I want to say that I feel this was a good event, but there are others that are not good, and I'm the concern with not knowing when these events are, not having a list and knowing what's coming up, is people just it's another bike thing, or there's people out there and they just paint it all with the same brush and they don't want anything, or they are upset at everything. And my feeling is having now had my awareness raised, there is a big difference between these events, and it goes to the event organizers. And if those event organizers were required to submit some kind of a formal document, it might raise the level of their attention to these events and make them do a little more work. So this event was a very good event, and I would suggest that everybody do it next year, because it's local. I mean, you're never going to have an event that's closer than this.
I'll follow behind you on my trike.
You can do the shorter road, too. You don't have to do the center.
Anybody else? Okay. I just want to say that the website traffic has been up significantly in the last month, which, and I can see what peaks it. It's, like the email blast for the Highway 1 meeting, all of a sudden everybody's coming to site, you know. So Highway 1 and Big Wave, and particularly I notice a lot more conversations happening all the time on Nextdoor, and that brings a lot of people to our site.
So what are your counts?
Pardon?
What are the counts? Because it counts.
Do not respond to people.
I don't retain numbers in my head.
More than last month.
The average,
You realize that no one could hear what
Let
you
me
were
try-
saying on the TV.
let me try, he wants to know how many people. Unique visitors, the average per day is up into the low 20s. And of course, page hits higher, but that's different people, average per day. So it's been, you know, the highest on any one day has been like 49 different people. So, you know, when you see these spikes and then, you know, so that's kind of cool.
So we're probably getting 300 or 400 unique visitors a month, at least.
Don't just, oh, yeah, okay. So, I just wanted to say, you probably noticed in the treasurer's report, there's a, this gets me, Facebook. Now, if you have people like your page, now you have to pay Facebook to have our posts show up in their news feed. We got, 60 some odd likes, and I post on Facebook, and then it tells you how many people saw that, maybe 12 or something. But boost your post. Spend $5, and we'll send it to everybody that liked your page and their friends. So I tried it out, and what a difference that makes. But I have to say, and so I did that for certain, like I did that for the Highway 1 meeting on the 18th, and I also did it for, I forget what the other one was, but there was another post that I did not boost, and that was for the Big Wave Design Review.
Design review?
Mavericks design?
Average apartments?
No, I don't think we did a boost for that, did we?
Big Wave, yeah, it was for Big Wave at Design Review. And I didn't boost it, I just put it there, because, Design Review, that's a limited thing. And Sabrina shared the post. Now, Sabrina has many Facebook pages. She's Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, she's whatever local thing you could think of that sounds good. That's her page. So she shares. So she shared on five of her pages shared this post, and bingo, a lot more people saw our post. And I'm just saying, and I've said this before, if council members would like the page and share the posts, it really makes a difference getting the word out. We have a budget for public outreach, and then, so now I'm able to, we approved tonight, if there's something important, I'll boost the post. But council members can really contribute to this. This is our page. If you want to be able to post, just ask me, I'll make you an admin, or whatever, but just go there, look at what's there, share it, like it, build the audience. I just really would encourage you to do that.
It's hard to remember because they don't share it by default. You have to go look. And so if there is something that you want us to share, you can definitely let me know, and I'll be happy to share it because I might miss it otherwise.
Well, here's what you could predict. If there's something important coming up, if you see it on our website, it's on the Facebook page.
It's a good
Quite often, I'll post on the website, and then, put that on the Facebook page. So generally, and like a big meeting like the Highway 1 or something, it's gonna be there on Facebook, so that would, anyway. So, are we done with council activity?
Just want to say, reiterate that I feel that the MCC webpage is the single greatest informational resource available to Midcoasters.
I will second that.
Yeah,
Phew.
I agree.
Great job.
as well.
It's amazing.
And you weren't mentioned in the grand jury report.
Oh, by the way, speaking of which.
They didn't review advisory councils.
I was gonna ask about that.
Too bad.
All the other ones were mentioned.
Because even Granada Sanitary, of course, they didn't see the revamped one, but, and a few of the others, I was surprised were dinged, so. Yeah.
Every specialist.
Yeah, they found something to ding. If they couldn't find it, they made it up.
Madam Chair, could we
The,
proceed ahead?
What?
No, most of them have
Okay,
problems.
Laura wants to proceed ahead. Now forgot what I was gonna say. Too bad. Okay, first, future agendas. So we have clearly, the 2 August meetings are scheduled. The 13th is Big Wave, and the 27th is Planned Princeton. And I think we need a special venue for Big Wave. I put out inquiry to Cypress Meadows, and she said she'd asked the guy on Monday, and she still hasn't gotten back to me, so I don't know if that's gonna happen or not.
What about the Caltrans letter?
What about what?
Should we put on an agenda for the Caltrans letter?
For the arrows at the Sands?
Yeah, it'd be worth having that on the agenda.
Would somebody else like to do that?
Well, since I
Letter?
complained about it when it first came up, I'll see if I can, yes, I will take that.
Thank you. And I would like also for the council to comment on the project at 115 West Point. It's a house expansion, and it's right on the beach, by the marsh, and my concern is that we need to, I shouldn't go into this. I want to put that on the agenda.
That's fine.
Okay. And
You might mention that house is going to be looked at CDRC tomorrow.
yeah, I've looked at the plans quite carefully and conferred with Dave, and we have no comments as far as design review. It's fine.
Yeah, it's more conditions of granting the permit.
Yeah, our concern will come up with, the CDP. All right, so does anybody else have anything for the July 23rd? I have a couple of things that might happen, something on weeds and something on, believe it or not, rodenticides on the Farallon Islands, but whatever, nothing
Well,
crucial.
so there is this
Nothing
subject
crucial.
that both you and I have heard from of rentals on the coast and not having a county policy. I think at some point it may be worth putting on the agenda, but I think it's premature at this point. There's no general county policy about renting properties out and length of stay and conditions.
Vacation rentals, I call it.
Vacation rentals, yeah.
I have a whole folder now, vacation rentals for emails.
There's hundreds of them up and down the coast from Hamilton Bay to Pacific Island.
Okay, so are we gonna
Over
put
100 years. Anyway,
down now,
sorry,
or-
I guess-
that's a heads up that it might be coming up in some future.
So you'll let me know in
I'll let you
time. I get, there was, I guess, Dan was a little disconcerted when I published the agenda Thursday, and I just wanted to let you know that, if you think you might have something, just keep me informed, because it's like, I don't sit there in my house knitting until Saturday and think, oh, I'm gonna whip out this agenda. I mean, it takes a lot of planning to coordinate this stuff, so keep me informed if things are percolating. Okay.
What's the
Always
deadline for comments on the ALEC?
The date,
23rd.
23rd?
It's far enough out, I'd like to see you try and get somebody, one of the representatives of whatever agency it is, to come out here and explain what the proposed changes are. If we get that done before the deadline for comments.
Well, okay, I'm on the project advisory team, and when we had our last meeting, they said, they didn't plan to come to the MCC, and I said, what I would like is a document for layman's, a summary for the layman on what's changed. And they said, well, do you want us to come to our meeting? And I said, I really don't think it would be useful, for you to come and talk your jargon at our meeting. It's not gonna help people. They can't disconnect from their jargon. And so Summer Burleson is the planner. She was trying to get this from CCAG. They call it an FAQ, but whatever. Anyway, finally today, she sent me, she put draft on it. She said, you're not going to like this. It's 4 pages, it's jargon. And so, and she looked at it with Sarah Rosendahl, and they're willing to go over and try and make it better. They'll run it by me, then they have to send it back to CCAG to get an okay. I just think that document will be more useful to people. You know, I've sat at these presentations, you know, you got the report, you make the big thick report, and you give the presentation, it's like, what? You know, and it's like every time you read it, you pick, oh, some little thing just tucked away in there. Just read today that, you know, they talk about you can do infill projects. So what's infill, you know? And there it was, it said 10 acres. Anything more than 10 acres is not infill. Well, that's good to know.
Okay.
But the council, Laura wants to go home. I'm sorry, we have to stop now.
Anyway,
After the meeting.
there's no time to schedule it before the comments close in any case.
You're the only person that's asking for it, Leonard, and so I'm hesitant to do it.
Okay. You know, because the timing is problematic, let me just alert people that the specific reason I ask for it is because buried in illegible, tiny print on one of those maps is a notation that they're planning on removing the southern displaced threshold. And I've been paging through the book, I cannot find any mention of it anywhere.
Let me speak to that, okay? That was in the FAQ. It's clearly explained, it makes no difference on the safety zones. The safety zones always have been and will be dependent on the actual concrete at the end of the runway. They have never been.
It changes the noise contours. When
The
the planes
noise
can come
contours
in-
have always been on the, because the displacement is only for one direction, it's only for landings, it's not for takeoff, and so it doesn't matter. The noise contours have always considered the full runway. Basically, if you have specific questions, why don't you just write to me and I can explain it to you?
Well, I think the public needs to be aware of this because it impacts
This will
Princeton.
be in this document I'm talking about, and that will be useful when the final project is approved and when Princeton comes up and people are saying, why is this way? And we'll have that posted. It will be a useful document, I think, more than having some guy come out and talk to 3 of us with more of this, you know.
Sure.
Okay?
Okay, who's the contact for, over at either county or CCAG?
Summer Burleson is the planner for the project.
Okay. So I want to pursue the displaced threshold issue. I think it's a big problem for
If you like, I will send you the draft FAQ she sent me today.
I'd appreciate that.
And
Yeah.
that, probably you will find that helpful.
Okay, thanks.
All right. If I forget, let me know.
Just real quick, we know that the fire district is looking for location. Have they let you know at all? Have they
Nothing.
informed? Okay. Okay.
We have a motion for adjournment.
Yes,
Motion.
we have a motion to adjourn.
Do we have to vote on that? I always wondered.
I didn't think we did.
Only if the chair refuses to adjourn, then you can put it to a vote. Otherwise, the chair has.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.